Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the ECS Botanics FY25 Q4 Investor Update. On the call today, we've got ECS Managing Director Nan Marie Shorey. I'll pass you across in a moment to Nan to kick off our discussion of ECS's updates and their progress. We'll have a presentation from Nan today, followed by an opportunity for Q&A with investors. If you would like to ask a question during the call, please type it into the Q&A panel in the Zoom app. So to kick things off, I'll hand over now to ECS Botanics Managing Director Nan Shorey. Go ahead, Nan.
Hi, thanks everyone for joining, and thank you, Tim. Just to let you all know that Tim actually arrived after a 30-hour flight from Europe in the middle of the night last night. So if he falls asleep during the presentation, it's not because I'm bad, it's because Tim is jet lagged.
I'll turn off the screen and then no one will know. That'll be my secret.
All right. So again, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining. I've put quite a lot of effort into this presentation to sort of provide some feedback to questions that I think some of the shareholders are asking. Obviously, it's been a big year for ECS, certainly not our best year, and I just wanted to really talk about where we're positioning ourselves and where we're going and why things look the way they are. So just in terms of the agenda itself, sorry, I'm just going to switch my phone off. Apologies for that, guys. I'm going to talk about the sales strategy. I'm going to talk about the trends. I'm going to talk about why we're doing the brand strategy we're doing, where our brands sit in the market. And then I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about really the whole of last year, but just where we ended up in terms of cash flow management and cost control, showing you the impact on salaries and wages, also what our cash flow looks like and what it'll be looking like going forward. I'll just touch on some of the initiatives because I think sometimes we go quarter to quarter. We don't normally talk about some of the things we spoke about a few quarters before. So just bringing all that, tying that all up and bringing it all in. And then there have also been some questions around related entities. So I thought I would talk about that very briefly as well. So the picture on your right is we're very proud of our Bling Blau. That's one of our most recent genetics that we've been growing at the farm, and certainly something we're very, very proud of. And I think you can see by the look of it, it's a beautiful flower. So as I mentioned, I just want to talk a little bit about the sales strategy. If you look at the chart on the right-hand side, you'll see that sort of towards we're tracking really well on our B2B model. And then we had a fantastic second quarter 2023. And then what happened at that point in time is one of our largest oil customers actually decided to start buying oils in from Canada directly. So they stocked up and then switched off. So that was kind of like a positive and a negative. But also we saw the impact of all the imported flour coming into the country, how that impacted us. We didn't lose any other customers other than that oils customer, but all the other customers we've retained. However, they've started mixing their purchasing, but also they've had a lot of pressure themselves in terms of competing in a very, very busy, congested market. It's very difficult for some of our B2B customers to actually differentiate themselves in the market. So in June last year, we made a decision to go B2C. And so that was our response to what was happening in the market and if anything, I would say I'm really pleased we did what we did. I'm only disappointed in myself that I didn't have the courage to do it earlier. It was something that I was wanting to do. We certainly spoke a lot about it at a number of board meetings, but I was pretty nervous about the impact that it would have on our B2B customers. And I can assure you that the impact you're seeing on the growth of the B2C is not because we're losing B2B customers. It is actually really around price sensitivity of the B2B customers, as well as them struggling to compete in the market where it's so congested. There are hundreds of products in the market. And as I said, some of our B2B customers don't really have any way to differentiate themselves in the market. We prioritized exports as well. That was because Germany and the UK are very growing markets. We have good customer relations there. But that in itself doesn't come without any challenges. We have to supply unirradiated flour to Germany, and it's not the easiest thing to achieve. So it does come with challenges. And we have to put a lot of effort to make sure that the flour we send them is the best quality we can provide and the cleanest flour. We also then started to introduce other products. We introduced capsules, and that is also doing really well. And we feel capsules are part of the future, particularly some of you will be aware of the issues in the market at the moment with APRA. A capsule, a THC or a CBD capsule is certainly not a recreational product. And so we feel if APRA pushes everyone more towards having a more medical approach or more pharmaceutical approach, then our capsules will be very well positioned, and we certainly have a leading position in that space already. We also partnered on the other side with a global Californian or with a Californian brand to bring those very high quality genetics into Australia, and that was something around the terpogs, which I'll talk a little bit about later, but certainly it's kind of the other end of the strategy, and I'll show that when I show you the brand positioning that we've got in the market. There's a cost of change. There's always a cost of change, and that might have also been why I was so nervous about changing in the first place. The one change that's really impacted us is the market for flour is significant, and therefore we have to produce as much flour as we possibly can. And that meant, as I've said on many of these webinars, we are short. We do have a limitation on A-grade flour, particularly from the polytunnels. So building those additional polytunnels or PCs has been really, really valuable to us to be able to meet the demand for our flour. And then obviously that additional flour takes more resources, and I'll talk about that later. The B2C model meant that we had to provide sales resources. We also needed to do branding and promotional work. And then also we have to provide consignment stock to the distributors and the pharmacies. The one thing that I've learned since we switched to B2C, and I've been speaking to doctors and also to my sales team, the single biggest mistake you can make is to have a stock out, but it's very, very common. So if the patient requires your product and the pharmacy doesn't have it in stock, they have two choices depending on what state they're in. They either have to go back to the doctor and get a new script, which everybody finds extraordinarily frustrating, or secondly, the pharmacy can switch it out. And when they switch it out, you've always got that risk that somebody won't come back to you. So having stock in pharmacies and with our distributors is absolutely critical. And the good thing about that is we're one of the few companies that, as we get this right and as we build going forward, we can always make sure we have inventory of flour in stock because we are the manufacturer. We're not waiting for it to get through customs, or we're not waiting for it to come from another country. We literally have control over that, and we can manufacture to pretty much to demand, and we do. Just looking at the trends, I think you've seen the slide the chart on the bottom left. You can see that B2C is now more than 50% of our sales. If I just go back to that previous slide, if I can, sorry, you can see that you see the trend that we saw with the growth in B2B. I have no doubt that we're going to see a similar growth in our B2C business. So we'll be back on that same trajectory. And so that 50% will become more and more. Having said that, we have seen some re-emergence in our B2B market. You can see on the top right slide, the little lime green box has got smaller and smaller and smaller. That's our B2B market. And clearly that's where the pain's been coming from. But because we have had an exceptionally good outdoor crop this year, we now have more flour to sell, and we're very competitively priced. And so we see that B2B being a lot bigger. And in fact, some of our customers that sort of trended off last year have started to come back. So we're really pleased to see that. Not to say that they stopped buying, but there was a long time between drinks, and now that's sort of changing, and they're starting to come back to us more quickly. I do want to also, though, add that there is risk around the B2B business because we absolutely can tell there's some stress in some of our B2B customers as they're struggling to compete in this very competitive market, which is very different to us, where you can see our B2C products are growing beautifully. The bottom chart there is just the trend on our international sales. I expect that to have an uptick. I know I've been saying this for years, but the KOI Poland registration is now hopefully in its final stages. We've submitted everything to the regulator, and we expect that to come through soon. And once that comes through, we'll have another European customer. And We get it's packaged product, so we get more money. Talking about packaged product, just so everyone understands, we make more margin on our exports. We sell them at about 25% higher than what we sell locally. However, they take bulk flour, they don't take pack flour, so the revenue is lower because for most of our customers here, we actually pack. But where you send bulk flour, you don't get the revenue from packaging. So we make more margin on our flour, but less revenue overall for our export business. Why brands matter? So obviously I've been learning this particularly over the last 6 months or so. But for us, what we saw was how easy it was for our large customer to switch to another supplier for oils without their patients actually knowing that anything had changed. And so that's the value of a brand, is that the brand didn't change. Only what was in the bottles or in the white label bottles changed. So that was a real eye opener for us. And as I said, that happened in December 24, 23, sorry. So there's also with all of our B2B customers, they don't really differentiate in the market based on us. They differentiate in the market based on whatever their value proposition is. And so our value proposition is easy to switch out as far as they're concerned. What we have seen as well is that people are loyal to brands. It's quite amazing. And my sales manager was telling me the other day that one of the companies that is actually now no longer a brand, they've actually sold their business. They are still selling relatively good volumes of their products in the market, even though they've disappeared. So their brand is still there, but the company's disappeared and the sales are still going through. So interesting to see how strong brands are. And certainly that's why we've done the Turpox thing as well. We do believe that brands actually also carry value, particularly if you get the brand promise. Um, I think it would be very easy for us to say, well, do we really need salespeople? And believe me, all of these discussions have been had. The way ECS or the ECS model is, we don't have a clinic. And so we think it's a more sustainable model. We think that it's a very ethical model, but we sell to doctors in the same way other pharmaceutical companies sell to doctors. And with all the noise that's going on in the medicinal cannabis industry, I think it's a very, very good strategy that we have, where we actually have individual doctors who believe in our products, love that we're Australian, have come to the farm in many cases. They're very loyal to ECS, and therefore, when they prescribe products, they know the quality of our products. They've visited the farm, they know the heritage, and they're very comfortable prescribing our products, and that carries a lot of value. And so, the more and more we do this, and the more we introduce local doctors to the ECS company and the farm, and there's a certain amount of brand Australia, which goes quite a long way as well. And then what we have done, which is the final point there, is we've introduced the AusSun brand. So for those patients who can't afford, the more sort of reasonable, normally priced products, I guess, like our Avani range, they would be looking for cheap range. So they're often buying flour from imported flour. And now with AusSun, we can compete very, very well in that space. And we are with the AusSun flour sells really, really well. And then also with the AusSun oils, what we've just done very recently is we've actually started to deliver to manufacture them in bulk. So we have a 50 ml THC product and a 100 ml CBD product, which is typically in the market at the moment. Everything's 20, 30, or 50 mils. So on the right-hand side, I don't know if you can see it because my face is in the way. On the right-hand side there, just want to show you the massive growth in sales of flour. That chart doesn't do it really justice. In 2024, we sold $9 million worth of flour, and in 2025 we sold 12.5 million. So a significant increase in the amount of flour we sold. And then you can see at the bottom the production. So that 10.6 tons that we've harvested in 2025, that flour, some of it was from polytunnels, probably about 40% of it comes from our polytunnel. So that would have been selling throughout the year. The balance we harvested from our outdoor crop. And just so you can put some sort of numbers around this, we lose roughly 50 to 60% of the product in processing. So we record, and we have to record for the Office of Drug Control, how much did we harvest. But once you've trimmed it, you've dried, well, it's already dried, that's a dried weight. But once you've trimmed it and you put it in a jar, you lose about 45 to 50% of the flour. So what we actually have available to sell, you could say, is about 5 tons of that. I spoke earlier about doing brand positioning. So you can see in this chart, I just thought it'd be interesting for you to see what we're trying to do is cover all our bases within reason. So we've got the highly expensive, very, very premium product, the Turpox product. We priced it probably double market. It's selling through well. It's a 5 gram jar as opposed to a 10 or 15 gram jar. And it really is a connoisseur type product, and it is I've got to be careful what I say, but there's a certain discerning customers that want to buy the Turpox products because of the genetics really. Right at the other end, you can see the OzSun, which is our outdoor, typically the product that we would have turned into biomass and made oils out of it. But with the oils market dropping off so significantly, it is a lot better for us now to be able to sell that as flour and make more money. Patients are happy because they've got a really good quality value brand. So that one's going really well for us and literally doesn't require too much selling. The wrap brand that you can see there, that is our veterans brand. It is sold exclusively through a veterans channel, so it's not in the market as such. And then you'd be aware of the Avani and the Avani Advanced. The Avani Advanced, it's taken us a long time to get it into the market. We now have the CBD and one THC product. Unfortunately, the capsules, we've had a technical issue. So not the capsules, sorry, the pastilles, we've had a technical issue that we're working through with the manufacturer. But the products that we have got in the market are selling through really well, and so that is working well for us. In the top left quadrant, that's pretty much where all of our B2B sits. So good quality, but we don't get as much price, obviously, as we do from our retail brands. Right, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the concerns that the shareholders rightly have around, what's happening, why are we spending so much money on wages and salaries. So on the top right, you can see that these are the wages or direct labor that is included in wages and salaries. It's directly related to producing the flour. So where we would buy in oils and we would just pay in terms of COGS, we're now paying in terms of wages or in terms of wages really. So that's the direct labor. So everybody who's involved in cultivating or manufacturing the products is actually sitting in that bucket. The only people that don't sit in there are actually the management and the quality team, who are also obviously actively involved in running those divisions, but they sit under our admin. So you can see it's actually a good story. We've reduced the cost per gram, for want of a better word, by a significant amount because the flour has increased. I think that number is 34%, and the sales have increased by 34%, and the costs have only increased by 10%. Having said that, we have a lot of work that we're doing in that space to bring those costs down further, and so we've got a number of initiatives which I'll talk about. The bottom chart is really where you would very rightfully say, what the hell's going on? How can you go from 2.8 million up to 4.2 million without really understanding, or what is the rationale? So I have done a waterfall chart for you. I think the important thing to mention there is 428,000 of that was related directly to labor to construct the new PCEs. So they were pretty much all constructed in FY25, except for a couple that are getting finished off now. So that was a big chunk of that additional cost. And that at the end of October, we will have finished all our construction projects. Sorry, by October, we'll have finished all our construction projects. So that one will disappear. The other one was obviously the investment in the B2C channel. And we do get additional margin for our B2C products. And then, as I mentioned to you earlier, there's all the other value adds that we have in terms of the sustainable business model and our ability to build a brand and brand equity within the company. So I think it's very, very important. We had to increase our quality resources, also directly related to the amount of production that's coming out of this facility. Our quality team was absolutely overrun. And we are a GMP facility, so quality is a big part of what we do. So we had to add an additional resource there. And then we also added, as per announcements that were made, we added Nick to the team as COO. And I think, there's a lot of pressure on me from the board to do that. And it's made a huge difference to the business having someone who can look after operations. I'm spending a lot more time now actually working with salespeople as well as overseeing operations. And we actually have no longer got a person in Europe, so that will all sort of switch out as well as we go forward because our European salesperson has left, and we haven't replaced them because we feel like we've got enough business, and but I'm actually looking after that together with one of our people here in Australia. Guys, I'm going to really apologize. I have to plug my computer in. I don't know why it's not.
No problem, Nan. Just take your time.
Yeah.
We'll wait for you.
No, it's the charger that I've got plugged in is not charging. So I'll just plug another charger in. Otherwise, you're going to lose me. My apologies. Right, we're back. Sorry about that. I've got two chargers and one of them's a bit temperamental. Okay, so I think I've explained that. What I was saying then was that we don't have that person in Europe anymore, so that will reduce our costs. It was not, he was also a relatively expensive resource. But part of what I'm doing now is also looking after those European customers together with one of our local staff who actually works flexible work hours. So she works in the evening when Europe is online to help them with order fulfillment and things like that. And so far, it's working really well. So I think I've mentioned earlier that we had to do a lot of inventory. We had to build up a lot of inventory or consignment stock. So we now in the position where it's mainly replacement. The only time that we really have to stock up is if we bring a new product online, or obviously if the sales are ramping up, then we have to get more inventory. But that's a good problem to have. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, we had a record harvest. So that is really good because we have now a lot of product to sell. And it's good product. So we have a similar amount of, I guess, product in terms of now with biomass, you don't trim it. So, yeah, it's pretty much the same quantity, but the value of the flour over the biomass is significantly different, and particularly in a market where biomass is now almost unsaleable. I guess it's very hard unless you're using it for yourself. There are not too many people that are buying biomass. The capital works are coming to an end, as I mentioned, by the end of this quarter. I've got a picture on the right there. That is our new curing room. Given all the additional production that we've had, we had to have somewhere to store flour. And rather than build another vault, which would have cost 3 or 4 times the price, we built a curing room. It's refrigerated. It means that we can cure the flour in there and retain and preserve its quality for as long as we need to. Having an outdoor crop, it's very important that you have somewhere where you can store flour without it damaging. So that's it was a relatively, I think it cost us about $90,000 for that. And the reason why it was so much less expensive than what it would have been if is because we used our own contractors. Right, what else in terms of sales? As I mentioned earlier, we expect this to continue to grow. We expect the B2B to pick up, export to step up. So, and then Turpox has only just been launched, as actually is the Avani Advanced. The Avani Advanced is still very much in the infancy stages, and that business is growing nicely as well. But not only are we expecting the sales to go up, we're also working very, very diligently on operational efficiencies. We've got a project underway at the moment to digitize batch documents. Now you might well ask, well, why haven't you done that already? It's a very, very expensive process because of GMP. You have to have validated computer systems. However, there is new technology that's come out that will allow us to have digitized batch documents without having to go through computer validation and the hundreds of thousands of dollars that costs. And we're also looking to implement AI to do some of the repetitive tasks that we have, like data entry and calculations. So that project's just started, but before we even started that, we're reviewing all of our processes to make sure they're as lean as possible. I put here that we're going to maintain the headcount whilst realizing growth. We actually have a philosophy at the moment that we're not going to replace people if they leave. Having said that, if the growth is what we expect it to be, we probably will need to add people again. I don't think that we are actually overstaffed. When I look at how busy everybody is and how hard everybody's working, as much as I sit back and go, how can we reduce staff? I think it's really a case of now we just have to focus on taking out waste, and also making sure that our sales are where they need to be. We've also done we've invested in a drone last year. It's quite large. It's probably like 1 meter by 1 meter. I think it cost us about $35,000. And that's going to make a huge difference because we had people coming in the evening. You can't spray the flowers or the outdoor crop during the day. You have to wait until it's cool. And so I've had teams every year, 3 or 4 people working until midnight spraying crops, and obviously that adds to overtime and also just the stress for those individuals. So that's a real positive. Couple of other initiatives just to quickly update you on Sun Pharma. You might all wonder what happened about Sun Pharma. As I mentioned earlier, the oils market has really dropped off for us, but Sun Pharma struggled to get that extractor installed. Part of the issue was they struggled to get people down in Port Fairy who had the skill set to do the installation, and they had some other challenges. But we haven't, we've been working with them and we've been relatively sympathetic because we know that the demand for oils is not that high, and so it's kind of like a trade-off. We don't want to put pressure on them, and then we need to keep them fed. So it's working out well. We've got a contract with them, which we will fulfill, and then once that contract ends, we'll decide what we're going to do. But I guess, there's two ways of looking at this. As some of you will be aware, this extractor was bought in the old ECS days from Medifarm, and all I can say is thank God we didn't buy it, we didn't keep it, because the market is so congested again for resin and oils. Bessie Sorbo, I mentioned earlier, is doing well. It's like all these new technologies, they take a little bit of time to be picked up, but the support is definitely there from our doctors, and our sales management are really pushing those products higher than anything else. And the reason for that is because it's very difficult to change them out once a patient is on a unique technology. So there's a double advantage. I mentioned earlier we actually have received our first batch of gummies. We were very excited about, or pastilles, but unfortunately they're just not the quality that we were hoping they would be. Something's gone wrong. They're fine in Canada, but they're not fine when they've arrived here. So we're working with the supplier or the manufacturer on that. Turpogs we've launched in Australia. It's going really, really well. The feedback, particularly for the Z, is extremely good. In Germany, we've had a massive issue because, as most of you are aware, we're importing this flower from Thailand, from an indoor grower in Thailand, and Germany won't accept the flower from Thailand. So we're working around that. We expect that regulation to change. Obviously, that's a mixed blessing as well, because having Thai flower in Germany is also not ideal. But we are also talking to other customers about being that GMP exporter of Thai flower into Europe. So we're following down those opportunities as well. The UK partner decided to decline due to volume commitments. I think, we're not 100% sure, but it might have been cash flow issues. So we're looking at an alternative model, which is that ECS is the sponsor of the product in the UK. So it'll be a B2C model. I think that is the right model, but we're still working through that at the moment just to make sure that we got the right partner who can pack the flower in the UK for us. And the New Zealand contract has been agreed, so we'll be launching there. They've registered the products, and that launch should happen soon. I just want to very quickly touch on related entities. I suggest, these slides are already on the ASX page on our website. You're very welcome to look at this. But just, there have been some questions. You can see that in Farmout, we spent 24,000 in 25 and 32,000 in 24. Farmout was the designer of this facility initially. Trevor's provided us with unlimited support. We get free GMP training from pharma. We get preferential service. So, for example, when I had Letitia was on maternity leave, and our mat leave stand-in left us literally 2 or 3 days' notice. We had no qualified quality person on site, and Pharmat was able to send us someone within sort of 48 hours. If we didn't get that sort of support, we wouldn't have been able to release products. So we've had a huge amount of benefit from having our association with Pharmat. Trevor's obviously a shareholder, the same as me. We married. He is very passionate about helping the company and making sure the company is successful. So I really feel like, it's a blessing. It really is. We do get a lot of support. There is a asterisk there. We have one employee who was seconded to us from Pharmac. There's technical reasons for that, but we basically pay that person's wages and on cost directly through Pharmac. There's no margin involved. Quick Solve. So that is my son's business, Matt. Matt was also involved from the start. He implemented our quality management system at no cost. He supports our quality management system regularly. It works really, really well. It would cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a really good quality management system in place. He provides us with all our IT support, laptops, passwords. You would know what it's like. He does all of that. He looks after our CRMs, he looks after our domains. And I would say that at least twice a week or 3 times a week, somebody says to me, I'm going to ask Matt to help me with that. So he really is a very, very valuable resource to us. And he does work for us every Friday, in addition to being on call during the week and supporting us, obviously, outside those hours as well. So I hope that clarifies for everyone. I think, the benefits that my family and the share that all my family bring to the company is significant. These contracts, Matt's business is managed by Nick, and Farmout's business is really managed through, in the past, through Arthur and Matt, maintenance guy. So, I don't actually engage these people. Although, having said that, I do phone Trevor when we're in trouble and say, can you please help? But then I don't sign the agreements. So that is, anybody got any questions around that? I'm happy to answer. I think the last one is also, there's been some things about me living in a company house. And again, I feel it's quite extraordinary. I have a home in Melbourne. And we have a property in near Heathcote. And so I live here away from our family and travel backwards and forwards to Melbourne or to Heathcote on the weekends at my own cost. And yes, I don't pay rent to stay here, but I think the benefit to ECS, I would far rather, from a family perspective, live in my own house. So I hope that clears that up as well. Last slide is just the roadmap that we've had time and time again. I just keep showing it. You can see that I put some ticks there today. We've achieved most of the things we set out to achieve between 2024 and 2026. I've added the launch of the Californian brands, and I've removed the vertically integrated manufacture of oils, capsules, vapes, and pastilles. We just don't have the amount of capital that would be required to do that. We are doing some work around vapes, actually. We're doing live rosin project at the moment. We got a grant from the government, and so we're working on that. But other than that, we won't be doing any more manufacturing in the short term. And that's it. Done. Any questions? Over to you, Tim.
Very good. Thank you, Nan. Lots of detail there and great transparency. So thanks for the presentation. As I said from the outset, we'd love to have questions from attendees that we can delve into live on the call. I'll jump into some that have come through during Nan's presentation. One shareholder has mentioned thank you for the detailed questions and taking shareholder queries on board. So just to clarify a few factors. So one question about the property up at Swan Hill. So the question is, given that the land holding for ECS is much larger than what is currently utilised for growing outdoor medicinal cannabis, can you talk about any plans or potential to utilise the remaining land to grow any other annual crops while waiting for the B2C market to meet the capacity to supply the medicinal cannabis?
We've often looked at it, but very lightheartedly. The problem where we live is water. It's a very dry climate up here. So in order to cultivate anything, you need to have a high value crop to be able to pay for the water. So all the dairy farmers have gone. They're really the only utilization you can have of the land that pays back for the cost of the water is a high value crop. That's why for cannabis it's great. We might, we were talking about it the other day, maybe we should build more tunnels and grow orchids. But at the moment, I think we've got to focus on using the money we've got to really get the business back to where it was 12 months ago.
Yep, makes sense. Thank you. Just to clarify a few specifics from the presentation, one investor's just asked, and I think you touched on this in terms of the timing, but the slide 7, we note the PCEs and the store projects will be completed in October. And then in slide 8, we say Q1 FY26. So when we say the projects will be completed October 26, that's October of FY26. That's what that means.
Oh, sorry, yes, it's Q1 26 or October, yeah, October 25. My apologies. Yeah, so we have the last two PCs are in final construction. We held off just because there was no real point in constructing them during winter. So we got the guys to work on the storeroom. But that'll be finished. And there's also some additional work that's been done. I didn't show a picture, but we divided a room to build a clean room to get another room that we could pack flour in. And then we're also building another dry room. But the costs have already been incurred. So it's just the construction cost. Now we've already got all the panels and everything. And so that would be I think by the end of this quarter. Certainly that's the timelines I've given the team is by the end of September this year, it all needs to be done. And then there's no major projects. And all
Yep.
that $498,000 we spent last year will no longer be required.
Sounds good. Thank you. So just also with the presentation, the question's been asked just on slide 4. We've got a chart showing exports to Europe and the UK. And just if we can reconcile that with the numbers in the quarterlies for B2B. So that chart shows March exports as 8 million and June 6.75. Just the question is, does that marry up with what we've put in the quarterlies, that those month by month figures on slide 4, I think it is.
We can go back to slide 4 and see if I can. Slide 4.
Yep, so bottom right.
Yeah. The answer is that chart is not millions, so it's a mistake on my side. I'll have to fix it. We certainly don't sell 8 million in a month.
Yep.
It's more like probably 800,000. So I apologize. It's good pickup, but no, that would be in I assume that's 800,000. I'm pretty sure. What I did was I just took the results out of Power BI and put them on a chart, and then I'm afraid I've labeled it incorrectly.
Could be
So
a
the growth
one.
trajectory is correct. And you can see in April there was a negative. So that was actually a batch that was returned to us. So although we sold flour in the month of April, we also had to get some return because it didn't meet micro. And so that's why it's a negative sale. I'm happy to clarify that or reissue this presentation with a correction to the chart.
Okay, all good. Sounds like a decimal point issue. No problem. Um, uh, so now you've been quite open just regarding the I guess the cost base and the the staff figures and all the rest of it. The question asked by an investor is just noting that you don't have plans to scale back the staff figures at this point. The question is, do we require the full sales team after the initial push for prescribing doctors has been achieved? And can you make any comments about sort of the portion of wages being paid to the sales team and I guess the sales strategy more broadly?
Yeah, so the wages paid to the sales team is reflected there in that waterfall. We started hiring in August, so there'd be a little bit of a difference, but pretty much that's the B2C sales team there. So that's the cost. Or in terms of would we reduce it? Um, what I'm really keen on is well, and this is the message I give to my sales manager is B2C is our future. And I will not stop investing in B2C until I don't see a return on the investment. At the moment, I can see it. I can see it coming. I can see the value not only to the business in terms of the sales growth, but also to the value in terms of we are developing a reputation in this market that is really, really positive. It is a very turbulent market, and I think any shareholder in the medicinal cannabis industry should be concerned about what's happening. But I actually feel very optimistic about what's happening because I think a lot of the things that have been happening that I've been talking to the Office of Drug Control and the TGA and the Minister of Health about my concerns about the industry. We have always played by the rules and we've always had this very sort of, I guess, pharmaceutical approach to the industry and making sure that we do things the right way. And I think this is going to hold us in good stead. A lot of things that have been going on in the industry have been extraordinarily frustrating for the legal, well, not the legal's the wrong word, the law-abiding local cultivators who've been trying to build a business. And I think some of these changes, doctors will prefer to buy from Australians if they can. We just can't meet the market. We can't meet the demand.
Yeah, it's a great point. The changes going on industry wide, and I mean this ties in with one question an investor has, which which is just asking for more detail on sort of the factors that have led ECS to find cash flow generation difficult in FY25, and sort of asking what has changed, what changed last year to make that harder, and what will cash flow generation look like going forward? And I think you did touch on this sort of at the outset of your presentation,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
market shift and your response, and then towards the end of the deck, you've got a whole slide there on the road to cash flow positive. So maybe
No, I
we
can
might.
just add to that and say, obviously, like this last year was a tough year and it was an investment year, right? It was investment and we had to change strategy. I also feel like it's tough. It's tough when you have to make these decisions and you have to make sure that you're making the right decisions. But I can tell you now, if we didn't make the decisions we made, we would have been in a world of pain. So yes, sometimes it would have been really nice in perfect world that trajectory would have just kept going and we would have been, cash flow positive and everything would have been gone fine. I think the difference between ECS and many of the other companies in the industry is we actually manufacture something. We actually have assets and it allows us resilience, it allows us to build that brand equity I was talking about. And a lot of those things or provide a sustainable business. It's very hard to be sustainable when you're competing with someone else's product in the market. You're worried about FX, you're worried about customs, you're worried about regulators. So I think at the end of the day, it was the right decision, and I can see the value that the Avani and the Ozsun brands have in the market already, and they've only been there for 8 or 9 months, probably 8 months, 9 months, and they already have brand recognition. We are number 13 in terms of the largest brands in Australia, largest selling brands in Australia, in a market where there's 100 brands, and that's in 9 months. I have no doubt that with our sales team and the quality of our product, that will move us into the top 10 and, hopefully in the top 5 within a not too distant future.
Come a long way in a short amount of time, so that's great. Um, just a question from an investor on the product definition. So, is the quality of the outdoor flower for Australia sufficient to not be irradiated? Giving the example of Sun Pharma, which is noted on the packaging is getting organic certification.
Okay, two different things. The flower in the outdoor is absolutely not suitable for Australia unirradiated, nor is our PCE flower. The Australian micro levels specification is extremely low, but that's fine because everybody irradiates their flower in Australia. Your question around Sun Pharma and the organic is Sun Pharma, if they get organic certification and we'll work with Epsilon who actually do the manufacturing, we'll be able to sell our oils as organic and that will be really beneficial. We are exploring different ways of reducing the bioburden in our flour, particularly for our German customer, so that we can confidently batch after batch after batch at least meet the European market unirradiated. The Australian market, as I said, is a little bit more difficult, but it's not impossible. And I think everybody's working towards that. And if we did that, then we'd have another feather in our cap because we'd be one of very few organic flour suppliers. But it's an aspirational goal at this stage.
Sounds good. And just further to that, the question's been asked about the Vesisorb gummies not being released to market. Now, I think you did give some background on this on slide 9, as to the reasons behind that. But the question being asked was, were they just not going to meet expectations, thus did not reach the market? It sounds like that was your explanation, really.
Yeah, I mean, they were shipped, they were deemed by the manufacturer to be perfect. They arrived, they were not perfect. This is a premium product for us. It's the Avani as well as the Vesisorb. We're not going to release something that's not perfect to the market. So we've rejected the batch from the manufacturer, and we were trying to work out what went wrong. It's just really disappointing because they arrived at the beginning of July and we thought we were going to launch. But quality is everything for us. We're not going to put something out in the market unless we're really happy with the quality of the actual gummy. So, yeah, they're not the easiest thing to manufacture, but having said that, we have bought other gummies from this manufacturer and they've been perfect. So it's just getting that Vesi-Sorb combination right. And really, we still haven't got to the bottom of what went wrong.
Yep,
But,
gotcha.
but we will get more. Everyone's working feverishly to try and get us product. So we hope to have product in the market in the next month or so.
Excellent. Um, Now, how much stock can be or is being held on site, and does this predominantly feed the customer demand while we grow to replace?
So because we do an outdoor grow, we actually end up with an enormous amount of inventory from sort of June through to now. We still have quite a lot of inventory. We have a lot of inventory, in fact. That outdoor flower has got to survive or feed our customers until sort of May next year when the next harvest happens. So we need to store it. And that's why that storeroom is so important to be able to store it at refrigerated temperatures, which means that we're preserving the quality of the flour really well. Um, we can, I don't know the number off my top of my head, but it's probably about 15 tons that we're allowed to store on site. So we're well within our regulations. Do we have enough space for that? No. And that's why we had to build out extra storage. The PCE flour turns over very quickly, pretty much within, I'd say it takes from start to finish, it takes 4 months for the flour to get processed, probably another month for it to get packed, and then it's out the door within 5 or 6 months of being harvested. I mean, of being planted.
Gotcha. Um, Now, just in terms of export, can you provide us with rough volumes or percentage of overall revenue exported to Germany?
Um, the reason why some of this information, I just got to be careful. It's very valuable to
Hmm.
everybody in the market, not only shareholders. So I'm not that keen to, I mean, I've shown that chart of the sort of, if you have a look at that, that's the sales into those markets. I'll confirm, but I'm pretty sure that it's a decimal place error. So that'll show
Yep,
you the sales volumes. That'll be multiple batches that we're sending. And that's obviously not only Germany, that's the UK as well. But some of this information is market sensitive, so I'm a bit nervous about sharing it.
that's fine. Well, I think you've given something of a breakdown there, so that's fine. Um, Now, just jumping around a little bit, in terms of the industry dynamics, the question's been asked, making the comment that the TGA is opening a consultation on Monday with a view to reforming regulations around medicinal cannabis. Just given the commentary and some negativity around prescribing and closed loop models, are you concerned that the regulator might impose restrictions on accessing medicinal cannabis?
Um, I am I concerned about it? No. Will it happen? Yes. I think there's been a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of vertical integration. There's a lot of, 2-minute telehealth phone calls. Those people are not selling our product. So
Hmm.
the people that sell our product are doctors who take the time to do a proper consult. Most of them still do telehealth, that is true, but it's not this machine that's pumping out scripts. So we think that in fact these changes will be good for the industry, I think anyway. as long as they're tempered. There's always a concern that the TGA could go from far right to far left, and that would be a problem. But overall, I think they'll be sensible, and I think tightening up of the regulations is a good thing. It's a great industry, and it's not great that there are people out there that are doing, the bad actors in the market. So if it takes them out, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and regardless of the regulatory guidance, I suppose, the effort that you've invested in your medical sales liaison team will position you well to support clinicians going forward regardless. So,
And
um,
and as I mentioned earlier, having capsules, anybody who's nervous about prescribing flour because they feel like they're going to come under the scrutiny of APRA, they'll never be concerned about prescribing capsules.
yep, gotcha. Um, question asked about the product range. Any comment or plans to introduce a new line of flour sourced from Thailand to compete with other imported flour?
Yeah, it's a good question. The market is flooded with Thai flour. So we actually did import some Thai flour, and I'm probably going to sell it to Germany because once the regulations open, because the market is so full of Thai flour that it's very difficult we can't differentiate. If you imagine that if you're one of our B2B customers, why would you buy from ECS if you could just buy directly from Thailand? And then, we looked at bringing flour into and I actually went ahead and actually sourced some, but our brand is Australian grown organic. We got to just be careful we don't confuse our brand. Having said that, the flour that we're selling under Turpogs is coming from Thailand. We were planning to grow it ourselves, but at the moment, again, we're once again at capacity. So I'm very happy with our Thai cultivator. The quality of their product is extraordinarily good. And it makes sense for us to just keep going down that path at the moment. But I do understand the rationale. It's like if you can't beat them, join them. I feel like at the end of the day, we wouldn't really have a value proposition. We would then just be a sales organization, and that's not really sustainable.
No problem. So just a question about your neighbours up there on the Murray. The comment's been made that normally this investor wouldn't put too much weight on chatter online on this topic, but the question is about potential problems with neighbours growing hemp potentially impacting the outdoor crop. Is there any truth to
Yeah,
this
that's a
dynamic?
that's a very, very good question. So in 2024 season, so a year ago, um, one of our neighbors did plant a small hemp crop. I found out about it too late, and we did have some of our outdoor flower, which was then seeded, which meant that it all had to go for biomass. We were going to send it for biomass anyway, so it wasn't the end of the world. But as a direct consequence of that, we've had consultations with the hemp industry, and we have a 25-kilometer exclusion zone around the farm. We are a very, very large employer in the area, and so most of the farmers, in fact, all of the farmers in the area, take that into consideration. Added to that, hemp doesn't grow very well here, so they found out when they planted it. So there was one upside from that um, accidental planting for one of it is that it wasn't successful. And again, I mentioned earlier, the cost of water, is very high, and hemp is nowhere near as valuable as cannabis.
Yes, no, that's good to have that context. So, just about your financial flexibility, noting that you've improved that with the NAB facility increase a couple of months ago, a couple of investors are asking, can you make any comment on sort of the scope for needing additional funding, even if you do sort of hit cash flow positive by year end? Potentially, would you increase the debt facility or seek to do a cap raise or
Yeah, certainly. My answer to that is we are working extraordinarily hard to preserve cash. We're not doing any more investments in any of our facilities I mentioned earlier. We are focusing very heavily on selling the flour that we've already got, and doing all these process improvements with a view to becoming cash flow positive. We've obviously run the cash flow numbers, and we can certainly see line of sight to being cash flow positive. Does that mean we need to do it? Would we still want to do a capital raise? we would only want to do a capital raise if there was some sort of investment opportunity or something like that, which is not on the cards at the moment. So I can never say never, but certainly for operational income or net operating cash flow, it is not my intention to do any raises. And the whole team's aware of that. We're all working very, very hard. For example, there's been no increases this year, just to make sure that other than those that were required to be given statutory increases because of the government requiring a 3.5% increase and the super increases, that's it. So, everybody understands the critical need to preserve cash as we grow this B2C business and we grow our export business, and get ourselves back to where we were 18 months ago.
Good stuff. Now, hopefully that's nice and clear for everyone. Now, the last question just we've had come through for the time being is the question of when will ECS return to profitability. So maybe we can use that as an opportunity to comment on some of the key milestones we should look out for towards that
Yeah.
journey
So
operationally and
there's
strategically.
a big difference between profitability and cash, right? So my focus at the moment is absolutely on cash. Having said that, we've seen FY24 as a reset year, I guess, for want of a better word. Oh, sorry, FY25. And so I have no doubt that in FY26 we will be profitable. We've just got it this FY25, the one that's just gone past. We obviously have done a lot of structural changes and a lot of things have changed, and that means we won't be profitable. Obviously, everyone can see that already, but we will be targeting to be profitable in FY26, and I can see no reason. In fact, if you look at the forecasts and the budgets and everything, um, it promises to be a really good year, but obviously that's all planning. We now have to execute.
Good stuff. Well, it's exciting to look forward to, Nan. So, on that note, I think let's draw a line through it. I'd really like to thank everyone for tuning in to join the update today from ECS Botanics. We really appreciate everyone's interest in the company. And if anyone did have or does have a question that we didn't answer today, please reach out. Nan and her team and myself would be happy to discuss further offline. We will also make the video recording of this session available online at the NWR Communications YouTube channel, and that'll be accessible through ECS as well. We're really looking forward to the opportunity to talk to you again as the company's development proceeds. And Nan, I might pass across to you for any closing comments.
Yeah, no, again, hopefully everybody saw the level of transparency. I do need to just explain that again, I touched on it earlier. As a listed company, we share a lot more than any of our competitors do in terms of market intelligence and what we're doing and where we're going. And that is, it's great for shareholders, but we also, I think if you can also just think about it from the other side is I do have to be a little bit careful around sharing non-material or, things that we don't have to, because I can tell you now that there'll be there's a lot of interest in ECS, not just from shareholders. And so from that perspective, I just, I guess hopefully you've valued the transparency, but also if you can understand that there's a limit to how much we can share just because of the confidential nature of some of this from a competitive marketing perspective.
Well, we'll all keep that in mind. And yeah, as I said, we look forward to chatting to everyone again soon. And thanks for the presentation. We'll chat to you all soon.
Pleasure. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Bye.